there anymore. The door, the wall and everything.
She could see through the door.
Yes. It wasn't there anymore.
And it's a special thing that the Sasquatch came to her.
The door, the wall and everything. And it just all this disappeared. The door, the wall, and what I'm looking at back there is this.
What were your feelings during the event and after the event?
I was taken aback, I was startled, but I wasn't frightened. I just wasn't frightened. It was just so strange. I'm not frightened.
She has good vibrations and she's a good person.
Well, I was walking towards the door.
Okay. How long do you think it lasted?
Well, I was walking towards the door.
Okay.
We're here for an additional installment of the Mothman Photographer, speaking with Jordan, who's a close friend of my niece Sharon Moore, who saw Mothman in her bedroom. Jordan has had some experiences as well. Here's one of his drawings. You can see this is a tree being, or a being coming out of a tree, sort of in the way similar to the being that I saw in 1973. Here he's got some disembodied spirits. They've had some experiences. In this house in Beckley, West Virginia. They live next to an old graveyard and had lots of poltergeist things we're going to talk about here tonight. So let's get to Jordan and hear what he's got to say. Before I get started with Jordan, I want to show one of the drawings he's done. He, I guess, was originally a Christian and has sort of been exploring Buddhism lately. And weren't you saying that this was a generalized image of the Buddha you were shooting for?
Yeah, I don't know, I just looked up some Buddha pictures. It was Linka, Sharon's idea. She just wanted the Buddha behind the altar. So I just looked up some images and kind of made him the generalized idea of Buddha. So I didn't want him to look like any other Buddha that'd been there. So I kind of left him bland so that we can capture the idea instead of the person.
Earlier you were talking about DMT and pineal gland, and that DMT is released in several different situations. Could you talk about that?
Sure. I don't have any, I don't know that I have any personal experience with any of this. It's just ideas that I've read. Dr. Strassman's specifically.
So you've never taken an hallucinogenic? Or?
Sure. Yeah. No, I have. Not DMT specifically. But of course, the idea is it's released. It's the only hallucinogenic substance, tryptamine, that's naturally in the human body. So therefore, under the right conditions, like you're saying, it can be released. The pineal gland is apparently extremely well protected in the brain. It's the only piece of the brain that is not bilateral. It's singular. And it releases, apparently, the idea is that it releases DMT, dimethyltryptamine. The defense is, it's both a spatial distance between the pineal gland and the rest of the brain, and also a chemical inhibitor that keeps it from being released into the body. But apparently, upon birth, DMT is released into the body, and upon death. And there are situations where throughout your life, this stuff can also be released into you. Chanting, meditation, praying, things that are very repetitive. And I think the chanting and praying is something very vibrational, I don't know. Can upset the balance of the two defenses within the brain and release it into the body. So when DMT is released into the body, the brain, the entire thing can be activated at the same time. All pieces can function together, and therefore what you perceive doesn't look anything like the world that we see now, because it's no longer filtered by the specific mental patterns. All things are open to our viewing.
What do you think this plays a role in creature sightings?
Certainly. I think a lot of, the world we live in, this little bit that we really understand, is a very filtered view of things. I think we always have things going on all around us, different interpretations of energy, different creatures and organisms and livelihoods going on all around us all the time that we don't encounter because they don't really fit into our little mental niche. DMT changes that. It relieves us of a niche at all. There's no little section that we are now perceiving. We're perceiving everything that we can. Therefore, all this activity that goes on around us that we usually miss or misinterpret or whatever is viewed much more clearly. That's when we see that there are creatures interacting with us. There are things there which have an interest in us, whether we know it or not, and who are speaking with us and directing our lives that we most often ignore or just cannot perceive in a normal circumstance.
Didn't you have some experiences in New Mexico with the fox?
Actually, that started in Denver.
Denver, I'm sorry.
But it was when I finished high school. I started smoking marijuana, and it opened my mind. It changed things quite a bit. For whatever reason, I could understand things in a much more broad respect than what I had before. I was relieved from certain limitations. Around that same time, I learned about lucid dreaming, or dreaming lucidly, and I started practicing that. So those two things together really had a big impact on my mind, on my psyche, on the things I chose to perceive and chose to ignore. Around that same time, I decided to start going to the mountains, was learning a little bit about meditation, and I started seeing foxes. And it took me a little bit to realize that there was anything significant. I had seen them around me for a little bit. But then they started making themselves very known to me.
And other people saw them, right?
Occasionally, and this was after the connection had really been established. What really clued me in, someone told me, one of my friends told me, that I would be receiving a spirit guide. I didn't even know what a spirit guide meant at the time, but they said it would be coming, and they told me it would show up in my dreams. At that time, I'd been drawing lots of self-portraits, and I don't exactly know why, but I was drawing self-portraits with no eyes. I was left just holes where the eyes should be. So I had the idea that I was going to be receiving a spirit guide. I had these self-portraits, and I was driving to work one day, and there was a dead fox on the road, and it looked perfectly preserved. Nothing was wrong with it, except it had no eyes, just holes in the head, and it didn't look like, it wasn't grotesque in any way. It was just extremely similar, and even the pose in the very instance that I saw it was the exact same as the self-portraits I'd been drawing. So it clued me in, and it made me think, this is it. Fox is the spirit guide I've been looking for. Then I started actively pursuing the fox, and the fox showed up just about every time I was actively pursuing it. And not just like off in the distance, but I felt inclined to walk to some place, and the fox would walk directly in front of me, or stop and look at me, from 10 feet away. That's when I started feeling I should go to the mountains, look for a cave. I found a cave immediately. The next time I went with the intent of seeking the fox and communicating with it in some way. And that time, the first time I attempted that, I expected it to be a long trial, rigorous effort, and eventually I would make contact with this fox. But no, he showed up immediately. And he just walked by the cave as I was sitting there waiting for him. And I just got this really strong feeling wash over me. Just no words, but just kind of a everything is going to be all right, just that everything that I'm going through, it's not going away. It's not fixed. I haven't figured anything out, but it's okay. Things will be all right. Just a very comforting feeling. And from there, it just kind of took off. I started seeing him a lot, quite often. And then other people also started seeing him along with me.
Well, you went to the right spot, because caves are where they are always said to come from.
Foxes? Or spirit guides? Or genie?
Creatures. What might be supernatural creatures? And I think earlier you said at first you thought it was a fox that was solid, like totally physical, and now you think it might be something else.
Well, a lot of the times it looked. That was one of the first things I was really thinking about. I was like, is this an animal that is being led, compelled to do something to give me a clue? And of course, it's very egocentric thinking that something's going to manipulate this world around me to move things towards me so that I can make some weird sort of connection. But it was hard not to think that way at the time. And then, occasionally, after I'd come to realize what Fox was doing, at least that he was helping me and that he was there for me in some degree or another, I started seeing him as a silhouette. Just the shadow of a fox would move across the road while I was thinking about something, or something like that. And one time I saw this silhouette move. It was a fox. It passed behind a bush, and on the other side it came out, and it was no longer a fox shape. And of course, you sit and you wonder, was it a fox shape in the first place? Or was that what I was looking for? But it was confusing. Anyway, recently I've been seeing other things, though, that I thought were completely physical reality that other people apparently have not noticed in the same way. And that has led me to believe that maybe even the most physical foxes that I've seen, those that were directly in front of me, that I could see the color of their eyes and the different hair follicles, all that, might not have been right there in the physical sense that I before thought they were.
And didn't you see a humanoid that you also think might not be human? A pink lady?
Oh. Yeah. We were just driving down the road, and this woman was walking towards the vehicle, and we were driving slowly and coming up to a light, and she was walking directly towards my bumper, and this was me and Sharon in the car, and at first you just think, I gotta make sure to avoid this person. That's what we were attempting to do. But as soon as she got close enough to the car where I looked directly into her face, there was just, I couldn't see anything wrong with her. She looked totally normal, I suppose. But there was a feeling, like a gut, just something I've never felt before, a little spark of terror in looking at this person that really made me question whether or not she was human at all. It's not something I've really questioned about other people I've seen before, but she was definitely, there was something really spooky about her, and I've just got this major intuition, both me and Sharon got this major intuition that she's definitely not what she appears to be.
And then you had an incident in a bar like that, too, where somebody clapped twice. There was a kind of a transient guy who was kind of crazy.
Yeah, I never questioned his humanity. I thought he was just drunk.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But Linka thought that, Sharon Linka, thought that he was not drunk. I don't know what she thought he was doing, but he just kind of was somewhere else in mind.
And she had another incident with a marginal figure who it was the three shaman and another guy.
Oh.
A Moorish fellow who, I'll talk to her about that, but in Beckley there seems to be these guys like this, and there's one called Quicksilver who you met, who
right.
His eyes appear
to
changed color, which now makes you wonder if he's what he's all about.
Quicksilver seems to be let's say the pink lady, the Moorish figure that Lincoln will talk about, and then Quicksilver. Let's take those three. The Moorish figure that she saw in the laundromat and the pink lady, both, I believe, might not have been people at all. Okay, Quicksilver he is human. He is a man. He is a homeless gentleman that we've run into a couple times, but there's something about him that is different than other people. There's an extra sentience in him that takes over sometimes. That's really what it seems to be. He channels something else. These other two people, I don't know that they're people. I don't think they are.
And another interesting thing about where you live is the house you live in here next to this old graveyard, which you guys have had lots of poltergeists and things. So if you want to talk about any of those, but specifically you had mentioned earlier about the concept of the fairies wearing people down, and that you felt like maybe by being in this house you're in that situation where fairies were trying to wear you down, and some of them seem to be attracted to Sharon, and she's had these experiences before, which we talked about in the series. But if you could talk about some of those things and any nights that you've had with her where she's having the night terrors and then all this poltergeist stuff happens. That's interesting, really interesting stuff.
Since I was very, very, very young, I've been around ghostly activity. Just strange stuff that doesn't really make a lot of sense, things moving, seemingly by themselves, but I don't usually see things like that. So I kind of got used to that, and then I moved into this house, thinking I know what's going on, I can handle this. But then there were some extremely strange nights that were so much more than I expected. The very first one had to do, it started out the night before I heard this cat wailing outside, actually directly outside this window here. And it was kind of one of those tones of terror. You just like, something's wrong, and your hackles go up when you hear it. But luckily it didn't turn into anything else. The next night, Lincoln and I are sitting in the bed there, and that cat starts up again. It sounds like the same cat. It's crying, it's wailing. It's obviously a cat, but it's not meowing. It's more than a moan. Anyway, so that starts, and then the piano plays from downstairs. The piano's playing. It's not one of those old-timey ones that plays by itself, so I don't know what's going on. The piano's playing, and then there's whispering floats through the air, as if you heard it from a distance, but the wind just started to blow. So that's how you are hearing it now. Whispers, conversations, laughter, little giggles. Strangely enough, no song, which is something you would expect, but the piano was playing. So this is going on around us, and it's almost like there is a slight atmospheric disturbance in the room, because you can feel like a breeze brushing your skin very lightly. But this feeling, probably just because of the sense of unreality, cuts straight through you. It's very scary. And we kind of sat through it and tried to, pull the covers over us as if that would really help anything. But it didn't. And
didn't watching a comedy program pull you out of it?
That was actually a separate one. This first one, we ended up just saging the house and very ritualistically trying to cleanse things. The second one happened, she was having night terrors when I got home. And they were a few months separated here. But she was having... I walked into the room, and she was asleep, and as soon as I stepped into the room, she looked straight at me and started screaming. And I started screaming, because I don't know if it's just like I was just struck by the same terror. It was horrifying. It was one of those things that's actually scarier than death. It's like reality falls from beneath you, so you don't understand anything that's going on anymore for a split second. So then I realize she's dreaming, and I try and calm her down. And I lay there with her as she's trying to go back to sleep. And she starts to fade out, and I think she's going to be okay. And I catch a brief glimpse of something, this dark gray tunnel. And then she starts moaning and stuff, and I just gently move her a little bit so she doesn't get stuck in it, so she can come out of it. And she wakes up, and she's like talking. I said, "Were you dreaming?" And she's like, very, not very awake at all. And I tell her I saw something, and she asked me what it was, and I mentioned that tunnel, and she immediately starts bawling like a very small child. I mean, it just went straight through her. She started crying so hard, and she cried for a long time, just at the mention of that. And then she described to me her dream of this tunnel and how she was chasing me down it because I was following my brother, I believe. Anyway, we got through that part, but it just, for whatever reason that night, she couldn't really snap out of it. At one point we decided just to not try to go back to sleep, to spend some time awake, go downstairs, watch some TV, something like that. As we went downstairs, I noticed that the walls did not look right. They were bowing. The one wall specifically that seems to have a lot of activity around it was bulging like a bubble towards us. But I knew that it wasn't the wall. I knew that you could touch the wall and be flat, but it looked like it. It was inside my mind that it looked like this, and I could detect that very much. It was like hallucination. But I looked at Lincoln, she was seeing the wall too. And I asked her, and she said she saw that. And our cats even decided to stop underneath that bubble that we were seeing and stare at it and, jump around underneath it as if it excited them somehow. And then, yes, we went and felt like things were swirling all around us and acting very strange. You can almost hear like little fluttering of wings or leaves or something like that. Just really slightly, just on the edge of perception. But luckily, Conan O'Brien was on, and we started laughing a little bit, and by not taking the situation so seriously, we allowed it to subside on its own.
So other witnesses I've talked to do that. They watch comedy at night before they go to bed because they're having stuff go on.
I really think
Harriet does
humor-
it every night.
Really?
So that's just a part of her ritual.
I think humor is one of the best antidotes to the supernatural, if you need it, that is.
Could you repeat what you were saying about how we've forgotten ancient stories? That was pretty poignant.
I don't know, I was kind of in a mode there. Oh, okay. I was comparing Mothman to Green Man or Pan or Coyote or Raven, all those things. We have become this culture where we're always progressing. We always must move faster. We must look forward to the future and forget how we got here. We don't listen to the elderly. We don't listen to the story. You know, certain religions come through that must dominate the culture. They are part of the culture, and they help weed out what no longer suits us. Anyway, if we paid attention to the stories, if we realized that the Green Man has been around, that the stag in the woods held secrets, that Pan was also these creatures, that Pan represented the spirit of the trees of the old wood, then we could see that these things are all quite possibly the same thing as a Mothman.
The idea of the woods as a place that's an incubator for these creatures is an interesting idea.
Yeah, I got that from. I personally was exposed to that through Mythago Wood, the book.
But don't you experience that when you're in the woods? yourself?
Sure. Yeah, the trees, especially, I don't know why, but larger trees seem to have sentience. And especially particular ones, and it'll almost seem random which ones do. But yeah, definitely, there's a life there, and it's aware of itself, and it's aware of us coming into it and what we're doing to it. You can't deny that unless you're absolutely not paying attention. Only then could you say there is no sentience, no consciousness in these woods. And the Green Man, the Puck, Pan, Coyote, and Raven, could be said...
Is Loki one of those?
Exactly, yeah. These all could be said to be the guardians or the interpreters or the representatives of this very essence. They are an embodiment in a physical or perhaps humanoid form that we can relate to, that we will pay attention to, because we obviously don't pay attention to the feeling of sentience. We don't listen to the trees, so we have to have a representative who will speak with us, who will look like us, who will get our attention.
Could you talk about the owl on the dollar bill?
Sure. I was reading in your book, your newest one. What was it? Moloch? M-O-L-O-C-H? Anyway, this guy mentioned something about the Republicans annually worshiping Moloch. And I immediately thought of the dollar bill because I'd seen a show about the dollar bill and how difficult it is to counterfeit. And they had all these little details. One of them was there's an owl. And if I have a dollar, I can point it out a little. I'm sure the camera won't show up. But you can look later.
It can get pretty close.
Okay.
As
Now,
long as
on
you
the
tilt it
show...
up as long as you tilt it up to the light and get it close.
On the show, it just pointed this owl out. It didn't explain anything about the owl. It didn't say this owl comes from here, this is the significance of the owl. It just said it's another detail to help prevent counterfeit.
Go ahead and hold it right up there.
And it's on a $1 bill, and it's right in the top corner of the border, resting in there on the $1 bill.
Bring it much closer.
Much closer.
Yeah, you can really focus. Yeah.
You still see that?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so is it
The
is it
top
near
corner-
this leaf that's sticking up to the top,
I don't know, I can't see it.
or is it closer to the one?
It's closer to that leaf, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little dot.
Right.
And it's sitting in that, it's like basically perched in that little border at the top left of
I've
the
actually
one.
got it right here. Right there.
Yeah, looks right.
In that crook.
That crook. That's a little tiny owl. And I don't know, when I was reading about Moloch and the Republicans, I just immediately thought of that owl on the $1 bill and thought, could be something there.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about that's happened here in the house, or that you've experienced in the paranormal area, or maybe with the after effects of those experiences? Do you think it changes you, helps creativity, any of that stuff?
One thing's for sure, I've been extremely frustrated because you come up with a theory that helps fit these things into your life, you start to think you're understanding it, and then something else will happen that completely defies your theory. Theories do us no good. They help to stabilize yourself, your mind, or whatever is unsettled, but really, if you hold on to them, you're not going to learn anything. We must simply observe what's going on around us with an open mind and an open heart, or we're not going to see what's there. And I know that I'm not seeing what's there. I know that because if as my mind changes...
You mean it's supernatural, or it's somewhat holographic? Is that what you mean? When you say it's not there?
I suppose. Reality in general, I mean what we call reality, what we see through this human perception, which of course is extremely limited. If our mind is always changing, then the perception's always changing. And if the perception is so easily malleable, then obviously it's not what we think it is. If we can so easily distort things with the way we feel or what we think, if we can change reality into whatever suits us or makes us feel comfortable, which obviously we all do to some degree or another, then none of us are seeing anything clearly. So the ideas themselves, the feelings themselves, the need to grasp these things is what keeps us from understanding what's going on around us. The need to hold on to some sort of reality keeps us from seeing reality.
Right. Are you going with Colvin? Oh, no. Are you going with Moss now?
No, I'm Colvin.
Oh, you're still Colvin. Okay. Who, I had forgotten all about this, drove me and my sister to find Mothman during the Mothman events in the car. A couple of times at least. Tell us about that. Where did we go? What happened? Why were we going where we were going? Give us a rundown of how the evening started. Evening number 1, for instance.
11 o'clock news came on. I'm there alone with my younger siblings, and
it's 1967.
Roundabout. And they said that Mothman had been spotted up in the Capitol Dome, or flying around the dome. So I gather up all the kids out of bed or whatever in blankets, and I go search for Mothman, but I never could find Mothman.
I remember going to the Capitol building, and you were in the Volkswagen, right? You were hunched over the wheel.
Yes, I was in the Volkswagen.
And you were looking up like, "Where is he? Where is he? We got to find him." And I was a little nervous.
And you probably should have been.
It was interesting.
But there was other occasions.
I wouldn't be a Mothman researcher today had you not done that, probably.
Another time, I just came to me. Up behind Stonewall, where people used to park and make out all the time. I don't remember the name of the street there, but there was a big opening and you could see down over the city. Overview Drive? Something like that.
Yeah. I think it's what's called.
There was another, it was always on the news. I'd listen for the news at night if they'd seen it somewhere. In the car. Get the kids. And went up there looking for it one time too. So finally he came to see me at my house. You know, you've already got that story.
Yeah.
I probably went out 3-4 times at least.
Since I last talked to you, you had a thing happen with your daughter, Sharon, involving the phone. And anything related to the telephone we're really interested in, because there's kind of a history of that in the Mothman story. Tell us about that phone call.
Well, there's been other phone calls where I would pick up the phone, it didn't ring, and Sharon would be on the other end. And I'd go, "What do you want?" or something like that, and she'd say, "I haven't dialed yet." This particular time...
You just happened to pick up at the same time. Exactly.
Yeah. But this time, I picked up the phone for some reason. I don't think it rang. But
I dialed, but it didn't ring.
But it was, "Mom, help!" And that was it. That was the message. And later found out at that same time I got that message over the phone, she was in the middle of a river in a car that was being swept away. So,
Where was that river?
Here in Beckley.
Beckley. Have you had any strange experiences in Beckley? Have you had any strange experiences recently in your home? Which I don't think I've got. Have you talked about your new place in Tornado with me at all? I don't think you have.
No.
It has a history of multiple ghost sightings, and
Yes.
didn't someone murdered his family there, right?
A man murdered his wife and 2 kids there.
And tell us about when you bought the house. You know, I guess they told you about that.
No.
Oh, they didn't?
My neighbors have told me since.
Oh, and there's been several neighbors that won't come on your property?
Right.
But this guy murdered his family, and
In the house.
so, but you're not upset. You have no problem dealing with any of that, right? It seems
No.
like you're like
No.
almost immune somehow, or that you can handle it, whereas most people.
It doesn't bother me.
And did you see? I remember you mentioned a parade of ghosts that came out of the pond, and then there was a woman dressed in white in the road in front, and someone drove through her.
But I didn't see that. My neighbors have seen that. That's why they're afraid.
What have you seen or experienced?
Me, myself, have not really...
Poltergeist?
No.
TV
not-
turning off and on?
That was a friend of mine.
Oh.
When I'm gone. Not really when I'm there. I don't really feel like the houses I had before. I don't feel much activity there.
Earlier you mentioned, and I didn't know this, but you said that maybe even in a rainstorm you would go sleep under trees during the day and like fall asleep. Could you talk about that? Did you do it a lot?
When I was a kid, I had this fascination with the woods. And I would always go off and hide or stay for hours and hours, and it would get dark and my parents couldn't find me because I'm in the woods either asleep or something. Since I have moved to this new property, I'm starting to have the same feelings I did as a child. I spend a lot of time in the woods. It's like I'm back to my roots of being a child again. That's why I enjoy being outside so much there.
Has it affected, you seem more emotional now. Do you think like that connection is like, there's an emotional connection coming back with because you're in the woods more?
I'm only emotional.
Oh, it's not. Well, I'm just thinking that if I were to be living in the woods, which I would love, I could definitely feel that I would drift back and relive.
But it's good
earlier
feelings.
times.
It's not.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. But it could be really good emotions, right? You're talking about.
Yeah, I lose myself for hours out there just like I did when I was a kid.
Do you want to talk about your salad bar?
Oh! No.
No, you were a salad bar activist. I just thought that was really fun.
I am an activist when I find something to be active about.
They were going to take a salad bar out, and Loretta was the activist trying to keep it from getting
You
taken
didn't
out.
hear that story.
Where?
Well, tell
In
it.
the Kroger.
You're gonna remove the sound bar.
I found out Kroger in the poorer population areas, they won't have the healthy food. When I lived down on the west side of Charleston, which is a not so good area, they were going to take out the salad bar. So I took it upon myself to find out the 800 numbers for where you complain to Kroger. So I went to the manager and asked him, where do you complain? So then I started stalking the salad bar during the day, people coming in to fill up for lunches. And I'm like, do you know they're going to take out our salad? So I'm giving out everybody the 800 numbers to complain. That was it. They still took it away. Even with all my stalking.
Anything else in your life recently? Any visits from your grandfather? Or
No, that was years ago. Right now, I think I'm in a psychic lull.
Mhm.
I need a
Me
little,
too.
I don't know, something.
Me too.
But I did have a couple things move on their own today. Wasn't it today?
That's right. The lights have been going out since you've been here. You've had some
not
things
good.
fly across the room.
last night remember the star went around by itself,
Yep.
and then today my makeup moved around by itself.
Oh, you
Upstairs
mean your
this
pieces
morning.
of things that you had arranged on a desktop?
I had 2 identical bottles sitting side by side because one of them then moved away from the other one. Didn't fall over, it just moved away. That was it. I just noticed it.
We're here with Sharon Moore. Sharon Moss.
Sharon Moss.
Sharon Moss. And we are. Can you verify what your mom was saying about the phone call, the stream crossing?
Yeah, I had been out for digging in a big truck and came to this, what didn't seem like a too deep of a river. And me being the redneck that I am at heart, thought I would go across it. And I got about halfway out in the water, and the water was coming up over the top of the car. And I was pretty petrified. And I thought, oh, the truck was actually moving a little bit. But I gunned it, got across. But when I got across, I was weak and had a pretty good scare. When I got home, later on, I called her and told her about it. And she said that she'd gotten a call. She asked me if I had called her. Because she said she got a really strange call that was saying help. And that it even said mom. And I said, no, I didn't call you, but this happened. And I was pretty scared. So I didn't call her at all. But she said that she got a call. And that's what it said. And then it sounded like me when I said mom too. So that's it.
You talked about your skin being on fire. I guess that was that the
First
first
night I stayed
you
here.
moved into this house again, which a neighbor just told you was haunted. Some people know about this house, right?
Nobody had told me about it at that point. Somebody told me that this house was haunted in this area, especially beside the graveyard, which is right beside where I live. He told me that probably, I don't know, within the last year, and I've lived here for like almost 4. So, but I moved in. Well, first of all, usually if I stay somewhere, anywhere, it could be a hotel, a friend's house. If I stay somewhere I've never stayed before, something usually will occur. I might catch a glimpse of something, have a dream of something pretty strong. But it seems like if it's not a place I'm used to, or that I've somehow cleansed and protected so that it keeps me somewhat protected from this stuff, then I'm pretty susceptible to it. But anyway, the first night I was here, I was asleep and I woke up, screaming, and I felt like I was on fire. My skin felt like it was literally burning off of me. It was very intense pain. I ran all the way into the bathroom, put water on my arms, turned on the sink, and it was still burning. I was wide awake, looking in the mirror and everything right in front of me. And it took a few minutes for it to wear off. And later on, I felt like I had experienced the death or the burning of somebody, possibly in the graveyard next door.
Do you think there's any connection between Mithra and Mothman? No, Mithra and Mothra. Because earlier you were talking about Mithra. Earlier you were talking about Mithra, and I haven't mentioned Mithra yet in the series. I've mentioned that the Christ story is very similar to the story of Krishna, to certain symbolisms of the Garuda, very similar, and the Thunderbird, and so on and so on. But you were talking about Mithra. Can you talk about who Mithra was? And that whole angle?
Well,
Could it be the Mothman? Could it be the same kind of creature manifesting? Back then they had a way of talking about it. Today we have a different way.
I don't really associate it with a creature. It's more of a savior figure, like Jesus.
More human than creature.
Yes, more human than creature. Son of God, perfect, that kind of thing, but not really a creature.
Are there tunnels under Beckley?
And we have heard that there are tunnels under Beckley. There are haunted, what do you call it, tours through Beckley occasionally, and I've heard that whoever does this tour is the one that tells people about the tunnels underground. There's a building right in the center of town over here that's called the Soldiers Memorial, and it gets 3 or 4 stories, and it dates back to the Civil War and before that. But it was a station for, I guess a hospital for dying soldiers, wounded soldiers, and it's very haunted from all the fatalities that occurred there. So it's right in the center of town. It's probably, I don't know, half a mile from the house, if that.
What's Beckley about? What made Beckley what it is? It's kind of a tourist destination now.
Well, you know.
Is it coal? Big coal?
Yeah, cool. But it's really odd. And I hate to say this. Maybe I shouldn't say this on camera. But I have never seen so many deformities, handicaps, seeming psychosis, people missing limbs with withered limbs, speech problems, and I've made, jokes about, the gene pool being shallow here, but that's just a joke.
Could it be a wound in the earth, like Quicksilver says?
I think that there's something here that affects people physically and makes them ill. And since I have been here, my body has been breaking down.
Is it that kind of idea about the fairies wearing you down kind of thing?
Possibly, yes. But I've
that
always
why-
protected myself from anything that I think might be harmful. But I think that people that would not protect themselves would be very susceptible to it. And it's more than just a coincidence, because, everywhere that we go, we see someone who's handicapped in a severe way, seeming like they're just wandering around in a fog, babbling. There's something different here than anywhere I've ever been before.
Why do you think President Bush came here? Because he came and he got like this great welcome, right? They had him in the armory and like.
Not from me, but yes, from everybody that I worked with was really excited about it.
Didn't you say that they were urged to go and support there was something at work about you had to support him, or did you feel any pressure to support him?
The owner of our company, the past one of the big guys in our company had a little meeting with all of us not too far before that, and said that we should try to, yes. But he's, of course, running for mayor soon, but he's very political, and he tried to urge us all to go support yes.
Do you feel like because you've had a lot of experiences over many years, and I was speculating that the phenomenon follows you, but you think there's been times when it doesn't follow you.
Now, I do think that some certain things either follow me or I create situations where they seem to be able to easily occur.
But then you deal with it, right? But then you cleanse. It's like it comes up for you. Your awareness brings it up, and then you deal with it, which seems like a good process in a way, because you're cleansing the earth kind of as you go.
Well, I feel like this world, there is no real separation. I feel like the spirit world is all around us. If there is anything such as a heaven, as people believe, I believe it is here around us all the time. I think that's why people can glimpse spirits or ghosts. Some people have a gift for being able to see these things. Some people it's accidental. They may be their symbols point changes for some reason, and out of the corner of their eye they glimpse something because it's here all the time.
Now,
So-
just briefly give people an idea of the assemblage point, for those that don't know.
Ooh, well, it's from the Castaneda books. I'm not as educated on it as Jordan is. But it's the idea of a luminous egg. We all have a luminous egg. And it's like a dial. There's a certain setting which we grow up with, or that we're set by our culture, our family, our environment. And that is it's our setting point, it's our normal, it's our reality. But the assemblage point can be changed and shifted by a myriad of different things. I can't even think of anything from you, Jordan, as far as.
But it changes your perception. You start seeing things that you might see more creatures.
It's internal. It's internal. It's not the things around you are changing. It's you are changing. Suddenly, you can see something that you didn't see before that was there the whole time, but you can now see it.
You're seeing a different slice of the super spectrum, or a
Right.
wider slice, or just a shift to one side.
A shift, yes. Yeah.
Do you think that you were describing earlier that you may have made contact with a tree nymph of some kind? Do you think you had an assemblage point move, dislocation that carried on, like that took you further with a wider assemblage point experience over the years?
Well, I have practiced witchcraft for many years, sex magic. I do believe that sexuality, sexual energy is a strong force in manipulating energy. But when I was a child, when we lived in Ruthline, I was in the forest, in the woods, which I liked to always go and hang out in the woods too. I found a cave. I kind of made this cave my home.
Where was this cave?
In Ruthline, out Davis Creek.
Okay.
It wasn't real super deep, but it was deep enough that I could get back in the dark if I wanted to. I'd build little small fires there, and I'd replanted fern, and kind of made a little home setting there, and that's where I'd go a lot of times and play. I was probably 11 or 12, maybe 13. Well, one day, I would sit there, on the moss and look at the trees, and there was a certain feeling that I got from being there. It was different. I don't know if it was the cave or just the whole area or what.
Would this be like a tantric experience kind of thing?
Possibly.
Kind of a chakra or, event?
Yeah, could be, yeah. But I started to get tired, so I climbed up in a tree and I hung there like a panther. And I fell asleep.
You were thinking of a panther?
I felt very feline, yes. I remember feeling like, this is what I would do if I was a panther or something. I did think that. But I fell asleep hanging there in the tree. And this was my first orgasmic experience. And when I woke up, I didn't know what the heck was going on with my body. But it was a very strong, and it was a pivotal moment for many reasons, but it was really mind-blowing. I mean, the feeling I got, the situation where I was, the fact that it was the first time, everything.
Was it a pine tree?
I don't know.
Because you were saying
I have dreams of pine trees, though, yes. For some reason, now I associate, I'm not sure what kind of tree it was. It might have been a pine tree, but for whatever reasons, now I associate it with a pine tree.
But it's a symbol of fertility, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
But
I've had dreams of pine trees in a sexual tone long before I knew that pine trees were a fertility symbol. So I didn't make that connection.
Right.
But I have very frequent dreams where it's dark and I'm flying through the treetops of pine trees, and it's always a very sexual dream.
Is there anything else you can think of that's happened recently that you want to talk about?
Wow, well, I've probably had one of the most active periods of my life, and especially the last year. I mean, I could probably talk for a long time about some things that have happened recently. I'm having the most trouble or the most activity in my sleep. Here recently, I woke up coughing and sputtering and choking, and I was laying this way and facing the door, and when I opened my eyes, I saw a face in front of me about this far that was connected to, it looked like a tentacle that went out and around the door and around the corner down to where the portal protection is. As I watched it, it receded. It actually, the expression kind of changed, like a surprise look, and it just went around the corner.
So it was observing you, and it was like, oh, this person's a little more aware than the average person.
I think it might have been doing a little bit more than observing, because I feel like it was affecting my breathing, whether it was trying to steal my breath or somehow come in through my mouth. I don't know, but whatever it was, it affected my breathing.
This reminds me of what Jordan was saying, or maybe you brought it up, that whenever the Garuda, or like a deity that has a seemingly beneficial motive, shows up in a situation with humans to try to do something or other with the humans, give one a message or whatever, that a malevolent deities tend to follow and kind of get mixed up in there, trying to sort of muck it all up. Do you think that this creature is maybe like that? Because it sounds like the serpent that the Garuda is always grabbing and thrashing about and disciplining.
Well, I changed the position of my bedroom, my furniture. My bed was in direct line from the area of the house that seems to be very active on the outside and the stairwell. And it sounds crazy, but we were starting to feel like we were in the path of things traveling. Because when I would sleep, I would hear things over to my right, over where the wall is. That was so active, and it was like it was going passing over top of me. That's where the graveyard is. They would pass over top of me and go down the stairwell.
It's like they're flying in and out at night. Ghosts.
Right. And since I've moved the bed, I moved the bed to the other side of the room in the other corner a couple weeks ago, and since then nothing has happened at all. So I'm hoping that I appeased them. Possibly I pissed them off because I was in the way.
Hey, it's just feng shui.
There you go. I mean, that might be pushing it a little bit, but it seems like, not the feng shui,
aggressive feng shui.
Well, if they were passing over top of us all the time. One time, Jordan and I...
Who wants somebody stepping over them while they're sleeping, right?
You're right. One time, Jordan and I fell asleep on the couch, and we both woke up at the same time with this feeling like something was crawling over us. We felt the pressure, and we both thought it was a woman. No.
Not cool.
I woke up...
Nope.
Well, I woke up one night and looked over to the edge of the door, and I saw white lace that looked like it might be on a dress, a hem of a dress, swirl around and go down the steps, and I think that's her. I've seen a man here also. But the woman seems a little unfriendly, but the man's very friendly. I've seen him a couple times beside my bed and coming up these steps here. And he goes through the wall on the other side and just passes through and never even looks at me. I can see, looks like denim, possibly flannel, old style clothing, but not super solid, but enough solid that I can make definition and see what his features look like. But he just passes right through the wall. I've seen him go through the wall, and a few minutes later come back and go back down where he came.
Is he going to the earth?
He's going down the basement.
Yeah.
The stairwell.
Anything else?
That's probably the biggest thing. About that.
Okay, go.
I think Jordan already told a little bit about the one night that we had a lot of activity, and I was dreaming, and I had the night terror, and we woke up and we heard the piano playing by itself, and we heard noises moving all around us. That was really frightening. again, that was when the bed was in the way of, I think, some kind of pathway.
So didn't your mom say, isn't your mom essentially saying she's had the same kind of experiences at the same time and during your lifespan? Sort of
Right.
thing with this serpent-like thing in the
Yes.
mouth and all that?
Now, the choking and the snake thing has just started happening to me in the last year. And she says that it happened years ago with her, which would put her about the same age that I am now.
Okay.
The ghost thing crawling over you guys, I remember I had been asleep on the couch one day and I woke up, or I was having a nightmare that there was this woman crawling over me in my dream. It didn't happen
Really?
when I was awake, and I woke up and I was scared. I was kind of.
Well, when we woke up, it was like you could feel a slight disturbance. You know, just a little, just like, you know, the little tiny ethereal ghost touch kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we couldn't feel the woman crawling, I wouldn't say. We
I
just
did.
knew. You still did when you woke
Yeah.
up?
Oh, I knew that that's
we were
what it
dreaming of that
was.
happening. When we woke up, it was like...
So we've all three dreamed of being crawled over by a woman on the couch.
I just forgot about it until you
It's probably
mentioned
your
it.
guide.
No, it wasn't her. She looked different.
Well, Ariane, tell us about the phone call that you got.
Oh, the door and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, my friend Brett was over, and we were waiting for my friend Roxy to come over, and she came in. We're like, "Hey, Roxy," and as soon as she came in and we shut the door, the basement door started going slamming open and shut. We screamed, "Oh my god!" And went over to the door and locked it, and kind of backed up, and we were like, "What just happened?" And like 30 seconds later, Brett's phone rang for voicemail. It didn't ring like a call; it rang like he had a message. So we listened to it, and he was like, "Guys, listen to this." Put it on speakerphone. It was us screaming like a minute before that happened, and he didn't. It wasn't a call. It was just that. So then we ran out of the house and we were scared, and we waited outside for like an hour, and it started to rain. So we're like, we need to get an umbrella. So me and Brett came in, and we got the umbrella. We're like, we're kind of hungry too, so we started rummaging around for food. I was in the fridge, and Brett was over there, and there was a thing of pasta on the oven, and I was bent over in the fridge looking around. And I feel this on my back. I'm looking, there's a spatula on the floor, and Brett was going kind of like. So he'd seen the thing fly across the room at me. So we ran out of the house again after we put all the knives and stuff in drawers, and we ran out. We didn't want that flying around the room. So we stayed out there until my mom got home, which was like 3 hours. And we called her, and she didn't believe me. So
It wasn't I didn't believe it.
Have you seen any creatures or entities in the
I
house?
don't really see anything. Oh, the what?
Camping.
Well, the camping, that was the first time I seen anything. Yeah.
Right, you were camping in Iowa?
Yeah, I was in Iowa, and this is when a psychic had told me. I didn't realize it until I got back. She said that I would change in August, and so I went on that trip to Iowa with Brett, just me and him alone. And we were camping, and I needed to get him his stupid shoes, so it was really dark, and I was freaking out because I don't like the woods at night. And of course, the car back was facing the woods, so I was over there with the flashlight, like looked around. Every couple seconds, I'd go and then start digging to make sure there was nothing there. And I flipped around runtime and pointed at a tree, and like the branch was here, and there was a leg that went like solid leg. It was kind of grayish looking, and it just hid itself behind a tree, like oops.
About what, a foot and a half?
It was about this tall, the leg. So the person was like this tall, maybe shorter, because the tree was kind of far away. But so I ran back to the car, and Brett didn't believe me.
Rhoda.
Did you hear some EVP on an answering machine?
Well, that was the same night as the spatula. We came back in after she got, but no, it was before you got home. I guess you were working.
Didn't you get a phone call of yourselves screaming minutes earlier? Mm-hmm. Did you already say that?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
The same night, the spatula thing, it got dark, so we came inside. I guess you were working legislature and weren't home until later. We came in and decided to do some EVP with cell phones because we didn't have like a recorder. So we'd call someone else's voicemail and listen. Like we'd ask questions and then play their voicemail on speakerphone, and we got some like hisses and like it was scary.
But you also got a straight phone call, right? That you answered, and there you were.
No, it was a voicemail. There was no call. It went straight to voicemail.
Oh.
There was no ringing. It was just that.
Did you know that you have a Vortex grill outside? The very products you guys buy, Vortex grill. It's the name game. Didn't you say your principal's wife, Mrs. Maynard,
Yeah, she's seen Mothman.
saw Mothman? Can you talk about it briefly? You got 1 minute.
Okay, she when I was out with a friend in a hall or somewhere, and this big dark thing with beady red eyes chased them all the way up until they got to the road, and they were flooring it, and it was still falling like right behind them. It scared the crap out of her.
Do you have a teacher that has file cabinets from Wright-Patterson?
Mr. Angeloto has Wright-Pat on his file cabinets, like barcodes, and he has a Masonic ring. And he's really smart, but
this is a Woodrow Wilson, which you have like kind of Nazi-esque teachers and teachers that were in the Air Force and intelligence and stuff. It sounds like a very
and
odd
cancer-causing agents,
cancer-causing agents, and outlawing bootylicious pants, right? It sounds like an interesting school to go to. It really does.
Conspiracy center.
Yeah. Are inorganic beings feeding off of your emotions? Yes or no?
Yes, all, ghosts, goblins, demons, angels, all those things, Mothman, Jesus maybe, could all be inorganic beings. They're not biological creatures, and they're drawn to us because of the emotional energy, whether it be fear or happiness or love or anything that gives off a strong emotional vibe. These things are attracted to it. It helps them. They thrive on it. Mothman, we feel good about him. Sandman, we like him. Easter Bunny's scary. All these things keep these things close to us because we're scared of it.
Do you think that things that lack a physical form have to have something to exist on, to feed on, so that's why they go to the motions?
I have no idea.
Because of a lack of physicality?
I don't know. I mean, they seem to be getting along. Our world and their world is definitely interconnected, but I don't know why.
I'm just sort of sorry. I can't tell you something that will help you.
I've noticed throughout this trip that all the houses have pentagrams on the outside as a decoration. It's a great thing.
I don't know. I hear that a lot of people around here have pentagrams. Gigantic ones I've seen that they put up on their houses, and it could be that they just subconsciously feel the need to protect themselves from the crazy things here.
And they are drawn to the pentagram for reasons that they don't understand, but very archaic reasons that somehow deep inside them that they just don't really realize.
Madness.
Takes a sip of beer.
By the way, I have Charlie Manson's crutch from his house. I didn't film that process, but we found this crutch in his old house, and I've given it to you. What do you think? Are you okay with that? I'm getting ready to leave Beckley to head for the Mothman Festival 07. And before I leave, we have Jordan, what's your last name?
Rogers.
Jordan Rogers, again, to talk about a really interesting thing, is that China is now, we talked earlier in the series about how the the Kadampa teachers are saying that Tibetan monks are reincarnating in the United States, probably in Appalachia because of the mountainous terrain. How a lot of them thought that they were reincarnated in that way, that I might be reincarnated in that way. That was what I was told. And there's now China is trying to regulate this activity, right?
Yeah. I don't know a whole lot about Buddhism. I'm kind of new to it. But the article that I read.
Here's a shot of the article just before we get going.
Yeah, it's got the website at the bottom of it too. So
it says China tells living Buddha to obtain permission before Buddhas to obtain permission before they reincarnate. And it's Times Online, UK. Okay.
What the article points out is that the Chinese government is just about, let's see what the date is on there. It's just about to release a set of laws that is basically going to restrict the Dalai Lama's power. The Dalai Lama basically, he and other monks apparently could point out living Buddhas, could say this child is a living Buddha or whatever, get them moved into Tibet, get the training started, things like that. The laws now say that all living Buddhas must obtain permission before they reincarnate. And I believe it's also understood that now people who are those pointed out that are reincarnates of past Buddhas, now they will be here in violation of the Chinese laws. So they can be withheld or locked up because of that, because they've broken the law and are reincarnated without permission.
Now, amazingly, this totally validates, well, not totally, but really strongly indicates that there's something to my theory. And I just totally came to this one day that that this reincarnation was going on, and that the men in black that were after the kids in Point Pleasant in '67 were after these lamas, reincarnated lamas.
Sounds interesting to me. I was wondering why, the Buddhas would only ever stay in Tibet, and now it's so restricted. What it says in just this article alone, and this is before these laws have actually officially been passed. There were two people mentioned. One I remember was a boy. I'll read this. The boy chosen by the Dalai Lama has disappeared. He was held in prison just because the Dalai Lama had pointed him out that he was a reincarnated Buddha. The abbot who worked with the Dalai Lama was jailed and has since vanished. Several sets of rules on seeking out soul boys were promulgated in 1995, but were effectively in abeyance, and hundreds of living Buddhas are.
Do you see auras around people?
I do at times. It's mostly feel, and it's mostly visions. I mostly have visions and about people but I've seen, I guess I would say lights and colored lights, yes, but mostly visions.
Could you can you give examples of some of these visions?
For other people, or my own personal visions?
Your own visions, and maybe also tell us about what you feel are your top 3 products of your inheritance. In other words, could you do any events, psychic events, pop into your mind that you haven't talked about yet so far, that have amazed you or shocked you or given you a new insight?
I've had one where I kept having this vision of this visitation by this being that was haunting me in my house, and now that my perception of this character was of a person in a dark outfit, old woman in a dark outfit. Now this could be, what the perception of the Mothman is to other people. For me it was this vision. And I would see this fall, and I had this like weird. I was sleeping, and I got out of my body, and I was watching my body, and I could feel this other presence, knowing that I was out of my body and trying to get into my body before. It was like a race to get back into myself before this other entity came in. So around this time, all these crazy things were happening, and I had this friend. Her name was Jane.
What year was this?
This was like 1990, and this was kind of the beginning of like my feelings in this area. I mean, I had them all the time when I was a kid.
Me too, around the same time.
Around 1990, and what happened was I kept having this like dark feeling around this person, and then one night I had this intense dream. That I had gone in this long journey, and I had it's like crazy, like just kind of Alice in Wonderland-ish, just wandering and like taking a train through this tunnel, and then climbing down these things and jump. It's just this crazy long journey that I had to go. And when I got to the end of it, I had to fight this being that was a skinless. It was just flesh, but no skin being, and I was fighting this thing, trying to kill it. I don't feel like I'm that violent a person, but I was trying to kill it, and I didn't really know what it was about. I woke up, and I was just beat. I felt like I could barely get up. My body had just been beaten by a baseball bat over. I mean, I felt like there were no bruises on me, but I felt like I had bruises all over my body. I just barely got out. And I kept thinking about my friend. And, at that time, I have this duality in my mentality. My father's kind of this intellectual, or he's a Mensa member. He's kind of the scientific, materialistic consciousness, and my mother is the other side, the spiritual, the emotive side. So I have this struggle, and I woke up, I'm like, God, I don't know what to do with this incident. So I thought, okay, I'll call Jane, tell her I had these visions about her. I had this dream, and it was for some reason it was connected to her, and I called her a couple of days later. I just kind of broke after thinking about what I should do, and I called her, and I told her this, and she was just told me that she had been dealing with ovarian cancer, and that they weren't sure. She thought that it was, she was going to have to go through all this. She's been doing this mild therapy, and it was getting worse, and it was getting worse, but actually in the last couple of days it went into remission. And she said to me that she thinks that I went and it kind of went into the underworld and got rid of this cancer. And these incidents had happened to me a lot. I had a friend whose dog that I loved named Godot that got sick, and she had eaten some rotting fish and really messed up her kidneys. And I remember Michelle coming home that night and saying that she wasn't good, that Godot wasn't going to make it through the night, that the vet said that by tomorrow she'd probably be dead. And so it was just this tragic, because we all had loved this. We just loved this dog, and I went to sleep that night, and I had this vision that I went into the vet, and I saw her. I just kind of floated through. I floated through the walls. I floated through the cage. Godot recognized me, was happy to see me, kind of perked up. I could tell she was sick.
Did you will this, or
I didn't? I mean, in a sense, I think unconsciously I willed this, because I would have done anything for this dog. I love this dog so much, and I would put my hands on her stomach and our body, and this vision was happening, and I could tell that Godot recognized me and knew it was me, and I woke up maybe 2 hours later, and I was so sick I couldn't even. I was in a fetal position in the bathroom floor. Just my stomach was just killing me, and sweat was just pouring out of me, and I thought I was gonna die, and it was just horrible. And eventually it passed. Eventually I was able to kind of flush the poison that I took and got rid of it. And when the next day Michelle went to go visit Godot for the last time, which she thought, and the vet said she had a remarkable recovery. And but this is what my grandmother did, that I found out later when I went and visited my family in the Philippines, that she would take on others' illnesses, and then she would heal herself. And even the origin of medicine, of what we consider medicine, the Hippocrates was always depicted in those days with a staff, where the medical AMA, American Medical Association, has those snakes on a stick, and Hippocrates was always, when there were some statues made of him, he would be walking. He would have a staff, there would be a snake on the staff, and it would be biting his shoulder. And the concept is that he would take the poison and know how to heal himself, and then he would know how to heal others. And so I mean I could rattle off all these incidents that happened, but those kind of encompass the an understanding of an incident that I consciously don't know of, the healing process, the visions.
This is very similar to the experience of the star of this film, Harriet. I don't know that I mentioned it specifically. I did mention earlier that Harriet is a medical intuitive. She can look at other people and instantly get a reading of what their physical situation is. Now, what I didn't mention is that she also does the same thing that you're describing. She actually has the physical symptoms of the person, and becomes that, intermediary.
This is a vision I had just recently. I had gone down to Sufi school and in California, visited with a friend, just to kind of. I was always curious about Sufi, and so I went down there. I had a friend who was involved, and for me, like in everything, there's a reluctance. Like I say, I had this duality, and I think it derives from my family. One side's kind of the scientific materialist, and the other side's the spiritual, emotive, and so there's always this battle that I go through with. These things happen to me, and it's kind of like Conan Doyle and Houdini, they were very good friends, and they were both kind of this this battle with themselves about the spiritual world and the intellectual world. I mean, Houdini would do these amazing feats, and still always in a doubt that that it was done in a kind of spiritual situation, which a lot of Indian holy men do this. Well, they'll be buried for weeks, and they could stuff up their nose, and they could slow their breath rate. And so I went down, and this one day we were driving to. I woke up in the morning, and we were going to these classes, these Sufi classes, and one day I didn't want to go. I just had this feeling I didn't want to go, and so we finally went. On the way there, I kept getting worse and worse. And my friend Julie, who I was driving with, she's just laughing at me, and I'm like, I don't want to go. I just she's just, come on, and I'm like, no, I have this really messed up feeling that something's going to happen that I was kind of frightened of. And so I got there the day when we went through the class, went through the exercise, everything was going fine, and by the end, halfway through one of these classes, they decided to call Sidi, who is the sheikh of this order, who's the leader of this order, and they said, what should we do with this during this class? And he said to do these certain type of prayers, la ilaha illallah, a certain amount of them. As we're doing these prayers, I started having these visuals, these visions of these beings that were touching me sensually all over my body, and not just like in a sexual manner, but just mostly sensually, like blessing me, I guess, or gracing me on my body, and my lips, and they were floating around. They're kind of angelic-like. I mean, not like your kind of stereotypical angel visions, but so they wrap me up in this kind of white cloth, so I'm totally covered in this white cloth, kind of cocoon-like, and then I find myself, I'm on my knees, and I sprout these wings, and they take me to this cave that, and there's this man standing there, and I could see myself. I'm looking at myself standing in front of this old man, this dark-skinned old man, and he reaches into my back and pulls out my heart and says, "Look, you must look at this." And then they take me.
You weren't taking. You do not take drugs, as far as I know, right? None of this. None of your
No,
travels
this
involve
wasn't.
drugs.
No, this I was
When you're pretty much
occasional beer.
occasional beer. Yeah.
So so then I had this vision. He puts his hand in. I remember just like distinctly seeing him putting his hand like in the right in the middle of my back and pulling out my heart and making me look at it. He says, "You must look at this. You must look at it." And then these beings float me up and we go just speeding across the land in the air. We're flying and we get to the Temple of the Rock. For some reason, I knew that's where I was the Temple of the Rock, and I wasn't too. I'm not familiar with this place because I was
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem. I was raised Catholic, but I didn't know anything about the Temple of the Rock. I had no. But the visions was the Temple of the Rock, and I don't know what the significance of it was for me. It had no personal significance before this incident. I had no idea. I wasn't really quite. I mean, I knew that there was some linkage. There was linkage with Sufi with Islam, but it wasn't. There's always all the texts that I read was kind of try to separate it even more. So we get to this, and there's all these soldiers in there, and all these other beings. We go up to these soldiers, and each one has an individual way of like taking these guns away or making these guns disappear. Some would just like wipe the gun and it would disappear. Others would swallow them. I would take a gun off a soldier and I would hold it up and I would push it into my hand and it would disappear. So we're doing this. They're doing this, and then one of the teachers, Fati, he started saying, "Okay, we're going to come back out of these prayers. We're almost done with these prayers." But I could hear his voice, and I remember like in this vision turning around and saying, "Oh, I better get back." So I go zooming back, and I come out of this thing thinking, "Wow, this is great." I write it all down, and I think I'm going to use it someday in a script or something like that. I had no idea what I was going to do with this thing, but it was just like this. I wasn't thinking, "Wow, I had a vision." I was thinking, "Wow, this is just amazing," almost like watching a great movie. And so like I was walking out just totally enthused, just like, "Wow, that was just great," and I remember walking out, and I remember thinking, what does this seedy guy look like? He was like, I had never seen a picture of him. He's in Jerusalem himself, and so I didn't, and I remember my friend Julia was like, well, yeah, there should be a picture. There's a picture around. She couldn't find a picture, and as we were leaving, I don't know why she mentioned this, but she just all of a sudden stopped. She says, that Sidi he's like the custodian for the Temple of the Rock. He's the one sheikh that watches over the Temple of the Rock. And I just went, oh my God. I was like, well, why did you tell me that? So then the vision took on a whole different meaning and kind of freaked me out. Because the intense magnet, it wasn't just my imagination. It became in a realm where there was a connection going on. The next day, I went to a healer, this woman that Julia sees, and she did some work with me, which was very, very great work, and I kind of like released a lot of stuff. But as we were leaving, and this weird thing she did to me, I was walking out the door. I was kind of exhausted. I'd done all this crying. I'd done all this, physical work, and I was tired. I've been traveling. I was in California, and she goes, "Have you ever seen a picture of Sidi?" And I said, and I remember walking. She was standing behind me, and she goes, "Have you ever seen a picture of Sidi?" I said, "No. As a matter of fact, I always wanted it." And right when I turned around, she had a picture of him. She held it right in my face, and it was the man that was in my vision. The man who shoved his hand into my small of my back and held up my heart, made me look at it. My knees buckled. I was just like, because there's a part of me that just doesn't want to deal with this stuff, and a part of me, which I have to, which we all have to, and it's a struggle.
Don't start crying over there. Big boys don't cry now. How you doing? You look like your daddy too, man. That's scary. You got more hair than your daddy, though, so that's cool.
Okay, the Godfather is now going to do the African ritual. He's going to do a quick explanation here of the African ritual.
Okay.
What's this all
You
about?
can't be crying now.
What are we going to do out here?
This is a ritual here that most African tribes do when a baby's born. They kind of give the baby's soul to the world. And when you lift him high, like he control the world, you lift him over the world and say, I give this son of mine to the world and hope greatness come behind it. And through their life, they have greatness. It's a little bit more detail than that, but it's just a basic... hey,
So
come on
if that's done for every tribal member, then does every tribal member become great?
Oh, yes.
Or is there
In
some
their
that
own
don't?
way. In their own way. Hey, come
Okay.
on, man. You can't be crying. You can't be crying. You can't be crying.
Okay,
Again.
here we go.
Okay, the out is weather. Get you. Okay, man, this is it. This is the highest point, close to it. Okay, little man, you ready to get your blessing? Okay, little man. I'll hold you up here and bless you to the world. You shall receive all the greatness in the world. You're gonna be the greatest little kid ever hit the world, okay? You're gonna be the greatest basketball player ever walk. I can guarantee you that. And a good scholar at that.
All right.
You're gonna be greater than your daddy. Look at you. You start crying, huh? You say, I like that, huh? Like riding in the air, huh? Look at it. You like that. Look at that. You like that, don't you? You can be crying. You like that?
Well, that's a good one.
You like that, huh?
Because we don't have elders, or we don't have teachers, we don't have gurus in this culture. We don't have somebody balls of light, alcohol, TV, balls of light. You know, we do a lot of drugs. We drink a lot of alcohol, opiates, focus that energy. Paranormal experiences.
So much Mothman activity.
Paranormal experiences. Balls of light.
Balls of light.
If you want to see them as angels, you'll see them as angels. If you want to see them as aliens, you'll see them as aliens. Watch TV. Yeah, it's energy. Round purple balls of light. You know, we do a lot of drugs. Energy. Watch TV.
Balls of light.
Yoga or meditation. Alcohol or TV. Yoga or meditation, focus that energy. Yoga or meditation, alcohol or TV. Yoga or meditation, balls of light.
Balls of light. Part of a nationwide occult group.
Killing each other left and right.
So much Mothman activity.
Watch TV. Yeah, it's energy.
A nationwide occult group.
The battle of good and evil.
6 years after the Mothman.
Watch TV.
Balls of light. He pulled one of the key Mothman experiencers out of her. He tried to pull her into his car.
Paranormal experiences. Round purple balls of light.
So much Mothman activity.
Round purple energy. Balls of light.
Balls of light.
If you want to see them as angels, you'll see them as angels. If you want to see them as aliens, you'll see them as aliens. Focus that energy. The battle of good and evil. Paranormal experiences. The battle of good and evil. Watch TV.
Balls of light.
The most important question is whether you perceive the world as one of good or one of evil.